everybody. Thank you all for being here. My name is Gina Duvernay, and I am the Adult Services Manager for Gwinnett County Public Library. Thank you for being here. We're going to switch things up tonight just a tad because our fashionista has to jet set off, and therefore she has already come to pre-sign books for you all. So it's the ink is still wet, okay? And we're gonna have our conversation, and then afterwards, there'll be time to have a photo with Nikesha, okay? But we have The Bookseller is the name of the bookstore that's with us tonight, right outside of this room. So if you'd like to purchase a copy, please see The Bookseller. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and read the bios unless y'all wanna hear from me all night. Oh, okay. Well, all right. Moderating tonight's talk is Denisha and Augustine. Augustine, and she is 1/4 of the Reading Black Girls, an online platform committed to amplifying and promoting books written by BIPOC authors. Since 2021, the Reading Black Girls have interviewed authors, covered book fests, collaborated on campaigns with trade publishers, and were featured on Essence online platform. In her spare time, you can find her drinking matcha, packing her Kindle for a flight, or yapping away on book threads. So thank you so much for being here with us tonight and moderating. You read the book. You're going to ask all the burning questions, and we can't wait. Okay, and our featured author of the night, thank you so much for joining us here in Gwinnett County, is Nikesha Elise Williams. Let's give her a round of applause. We're so excited about your book, and we're just thrilled to have you here. She's a 2-time Emmy Award-winning producer and award-winning author and producer and host of the Black and Published podcast. A narrative strategist by day and journalist always, her work has appeared in the Washington Post, Essence, and Vox. Nikesha is a Kimbrough Fiction Fellow and a DeGraw Foundation writer of note, Grain Tea. The Chicago native, she lives in Florida with her family. Let's give a round of applause again, both of them. Thank you so much.
Okay. So before we get into it,
okay,
let me just say that this is going to be the highlight of my life.
Okay.
If you have not read this book yet, don't worry. I made sure all of my questions are like spoiler free. I'm not going to ruin anything for y'all. Okay, we're going to touch on some themes. I'm not mentioning a whole bunch of folks by name. So the book is safe. The book is safe. So before we begin, can you just give us a brief synopsis of the book?
Yes. Okay. So The Seven Daughters of Dupree is a historical fiction novel about the secrets kept between mothers and daughters over the course of 7 generations, and it's told backwards in time from 1995 to 1860. The novel opens on the south side of Chicago, which is where I'm from, 1995, with 14-year-old Tatiana. It's her birthday, but before she can go out and celebrate with her mother and her friend, she has to go down in the basement where her mother, Nadia, runs a beauty salon. And the client for that day is her grandmother, Gladys. It is early on a Sunday morning because Gladys comes to get her hair done fresh before she goes where? There we go. Amen. And you would think that in this basement with these 3 generations, Gladys and Nadia will be passing down words of wisdom and words of encouragement, giving Tati the game, letting her know about what to expect as she's becoming a woman. And I see you shake your head. That is not happening at all. They get all of Tati's anger and angst because they are keeping something from her. She desperately wants to know the identity of her father, and they refuse to tell her. And that is the very first secret in the line of the Dupree women that goes all the way back to 1860 in the fictional town of Land's End, Alabama, where the first in their line lived. But they don't know anything about this ancestor. They don't know her name. They don't know where she was from. They only know the legend of how she died. And that legend is not a spoiler. It's the very first line of the novel. In the prologue, it says they cut off her head because she ran. And with that line, you know we're going to deal with some stuff. Enslavement, Jim Crow, what's the word? It starts with the R, Reconstruction. That's the one. The Great Migration. And there will be some healing on the back end through these 7 generations. There we go.
Okay. She's going to take you through it. But there is healing at the end, okay? So just walk us through how you plotted out this generational saga, because there were so many moving parts. Like the way, and if y'all get this book, in the front, there's actually the family tree. We had to plot it out in order to talk about the book because I was like, wait, okay, so-and-so is with this person, and this is Gladys, and this is, so how did you plot that out? There were so many different point of views and storylines.
I think because I did it in pieces. So this book was just supposed to be a simple story about Tati not knowing her father, and in the end, she finds him. And I realized as I started writing that supposedly simple story, it was not sustainable. There was not enough happening. She wasn't doing enough because she's only 14. And so then in the middle of that first draft, I switched to her mother's point of view and to try to figure out what was their relationship, what did it look like, how did it break down, and then bring it to a resolution. So they were the very first two characters that I wrote, and I wrote them in those specific chunks. It was Tati's section, Nadia's section, and then a resolution with them all at the end. And in those two sections, Gladys was there, but she didn't have she had a strong voice, as you'll find out in these early chapters, but she didn't have a specific point of view. I didn't know what had happened to her. And weeks or months later, I had written a line that's still in part 3 of the novel that says, where Gladys says something like, what happens to light-skinned women in the South? And I wrote past that line, finished the first draft, and then said, Self, what happened to Gladys? I don't know. And then I had this vision of a woman in a white dress that became the cover of the novel, walking down this dirt road, and I saw where she was going and what was behind her. And I was like, oh, okay, I know what happens to her. And then weeks or months later, I was listening to a friend and fellow author, Nikesha Elise, talking about a workshop that she teaches about writing the best first line. And then I asked myself again, what would my first line be? And that first line that I told you earlier is what came into my spirit. And I was like, okay, I know I'm dealing with enslavement. So I had Tati, I had Nadia, I had Gladys, and then I knew I had an enslaved ancestor. And so then my mind went biblical. 7 is the number of completion. We're gonna do 7 generations, 7 women, and I just had to fill in the other 3. And so that really just started by me asking, okay, what are your names? And then what are your issues? And then thinking about what I was interested in as the author at the time that I first started the book. It was 7 days before my daughter was born. Don't recommend, don't do that. But you see, when you read it, birthing was on my mind, and with good reason.
Yes.
So that plays a role. But then I also wanted to play with some other things. I wanted to play with passing. I wanted to play with colorism. I wanted to deal with the Great Migration. I was obsessed with the story of the Clotilda at the time. And so I wanted to weave that history in there. And so it all kind of came up with every character and their liaisons.
It sure did. And I mean, let me just say that the way that you paint a picture for your reader is so powerful.
Thank you.
And I'm not one to really like flowery writing, and it's not flowery, it's just beautiful.
Aw,
okay?
thank you.
So that said, just talking throughout the book, there was this reference to, and there are a lot of themes, we're going to touch on a lot of them, but there was the veneration of the ancestors, honoring them and also giving sacrifices and things like that. What made you want to explore what some might call that magical realism, or even just go that route and weave that into the generations?
I feel like it's all a part of different spiritual practices. Like I myself identify as Christian. I have friends who practice African traditional religion, specifically Ifa or Lukumi. But I always feel like with Black people, the way that we practice, we'll say we're Christian, but the way we practice is a little flexible. Like you see, you may not call it an altar, but then you got a place in the house that got doilies and flowers and candles and all the pictures of everybody that passed, and you're saving the obituaries. It's a little flexible. You might only sweep in one direction. You don't sweep certain ways. You don't wash all the towels together with the sheets. Like what we do is rooted in some other things beyond just the Bible, and we don't always talk about it, but it's there and it shows up in the way that we show up in the world fully embodied as people. And so I wanted to show, you see Gladys is staunchly Christian going to the church house in the novel. But you go down the line, there's some other work in there. And that just, I think, comes from the knowledge of Black people in the South knowing the land, that agrarian spirit, and having knowledge of herbs and plants and roots and what it can do to help and to heal, also to harm, and doing that. So I wanted that to continue to be shown in the book, even through to the epilogue where you see the character Nadia, and you don't hear much about her cooking earlier, but she has a little tin of recipes, and those are the same recipes that have been passed down from 1860.
So thinking, kind of going back to like your process, I know my questions are a little all over the place,
all
but I had
right.
so many, they just kept flowing and flowing, and all the three other Reading Black girls also got some questions in,
questions
okay?
too,
They were
okay.
like, you better ask this question, so I'm gonna make sure I hit all of them. So you are an established author, I mean, prior to the Seven Daughters. What was different about this process, this traditional publishing route versus the way that you had self-published before?
Everything. I'd always wanted to be traditionally published in this way from when I first started self-publishing. And I had gotten close with my very first self-published novel. I had gotten an agent. We had gone on submission, and we had gotten close with 2 publishers, but eventually it was no sale. And so then that's when I decided to self-publish and explore what that could look like and what success could look like there. And for me, for the years that I did self-publish, it was very freeing because there was no one to tell me no. If I wanted to write something, if I wanted to do something, I did it. I wrote it, I found the editors, I got the cover design, I put it out. I begged all my friends in television and newspapers and radio stations to, cover me, give me coverage. I went to all the book festivals I could fly myself to and tried to promote the books that I was doing that way. After the last self-published book came out in 2020, and I did a smaller book, a nonfiction book, my first and only nonfiction book so far, with LSU Press in 2022 about the Black masking Indians of New Orleans, really looking at Mardi Gras Indian culture and that oral history. And that put me into the archives, forced me to research and to stretch those muscles. I'm not an academic, I'm not a historian, I'm a journalist. And so I wrote that book during the pandemic, did most of the research during the pandemic, did all the interviews and really put it together. But fiction is my first love. And so at the time that I was writing Seven Daughters, I left television, so I was freelancing full time trying to figure out what this writing life looked like because I didn't know how to do it. I knew what to do, but I didn't know how. And so I wrote, honestly, this book started, like I said, 7 days before my daughter was born because I was writing for a contest, for the Gallery Books contest. It was 2021. They were doing this Own Voices diverse publishing contest as a response to the George Floyd murder and everything from 2020. And so I said, I can write 25 pages for this contest by the deadline of June 14th. So I started June 2nd, finished the 25 pages June 9th, went to the hospital on the 10th. My daughter was born the 11th, came home the 13th, sat in the chaise with the computer, with the newborn in the pack and play, read over the 25 pages, submitted them for the contest, and then I said, Self, if you win, they're gonna wanna see a whole book. And I was like, maybe this wasn't the right thing to do when you have a new baby. But I wrote that first draft in earnest, didn't win the contest, but still had a book. And so I thought, well, let me see if it's good enough to get an agent. It wasn't. I knew I was gonna expand the story, but I thought that maybe someone else in the industry could help me through my process because the book was getting too big. If you look at all of my other self-published novels, even though some of them have a large cast of characters, they were very manageable. This one got very big very quickly with I went from 2 to 7 main characters and was only supposed to be 1. And the 2 was just because I got bored with the first one. And then we go from 2 to 7. It's a lot of people, as I've been told. And so as I expanded the novel, there was one agent who had told me it's not a yes, but not a no. And so I would send her things as I was writing the expansion. And when I finished the second draft, and so I had written all the stories and I literally wrote them backwards. So I wrote Tati and Nadia in the very first draft, and then I started with the expansion, Gladys, Ruby, Juby, Emma, and then the enslaved ancestors. I literally wrote their stories piece by piece backwards and then put them back together. And so that is when I was like, all right, we're gonna try this, to do this with the traditional way. But if it doesn't work, I can still do it myself. And luckily, it did work out. And I actually ended up signing with the editor from Gallery Books who was over the contest 2 years prior. And so when I said yes to her, she was like, I went back and checked the archives, and I said yes to you 2 years ago. But the other 2 editors over the contest had passed. And so, but we ended up coming back together anyway.
It was meant to be.
Yeah.
It was meant to be, absolutely. So then and you kind of touched on this already, but from where you started to how the story had turned out, were there any just major deviations? Were there any events or anything that you had thought about putting into the book that you took out, or were there things where you maybe edited at the last minute and put back, or just...
So my editor likes to say that she put my book on a diet. She gave it Ozempic because it went from, I guess, 500 pages to 336, 320, however long it is.
See, I would have read all 500.
The one chapter that they made me cut, it's alluded to in chapter 1, but the one chapter they made me cut is I have Tatiana going on this class trip to Washington, D.C., and that is what triggers her grandmother's memory of coming up on the train from Alabama. And they made me cut that entire chapter, and I was like, ugh. So I tried to like fit it in there so that you know what's happening, it's alluded to, and they're talking about it, but you don't actually see it on the page. That was one thing that I cut that I was really upset about, but I had to get over it. But other than that, the other cuts, it's compromises. The other cuts, scene-wise, like Tati has a love interest, a little high school love interest. His participation in the novel got significantly cut down, but you still get the gist of, you know, their little budding puppy love relationship. Yes. And other than that, I was fine with any other cuts that they had me make, because at the end of the day, I was a line person. I wanted to make sure that all of my favorite lines made the book. And so if there was something, if there was a whole scene that got cut, but there was one line, I wouldn't found that one line and put it somewhere else in a different scene so that it still felt like the book and still felt like me.
Absolutely, as you should. So one of the things that you have included in this book is the family curse. Oh, I'm sorry. Y'all can't hear me back there? Okay, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna use my teacher voice, my bad. So the family curse was such a powerful point, and it followed these women. So my question is, how did you approach writing about generational trauma while also highlighting the resilience and the bonds that are between these women at the same time?
I didn't think I was writing about generational trauma. Honestly, when writing this book was like a fever dream. Like I was so locked in once I knew what I was doing and had all of the characters and like I knew what their stories were gonna be. It was every day, 5 a.m., no breaks, straight no chaser. I was locked in. Like one of my best friends got married in 2022. We went to Mexico, to Tulum for a bachelorette. I brought the computer with me before we went out for the night or did the day's activities, excursions. It was me and the daughters on the computer, locked in for the day. They were like, Nikesha is writing. She'll be ready in a moment. In a swimsuit, I'm ready. like, just give me a moment. I'm almost done with this scene. And so I didn't realize that it was as heavy as people are reading it until maybe someone else told me, because it didn't feel like that to me when writing it. It was almost an escape for me because my life was like a shambles in the midst of writing this book. The curse specifically, though, comes from, you know, my background is as a journalist, and the years that I spent freelancing, one of those years was during the pandemic, and the very first thing that I thought of when COVID happened was, how are people giving birth in the pandemic? Like, it was my first thought. My son was 5. I was not yet pregnant with my daughter, but that was my thought. And so I began writing a lot of stories about the Black maternal health crisis and maternal care, and talking to women and interviewing them all across the country for different articles and publications. And their stories, I guess, stayed and imprinted themselves on me and then came out on the page. And I was like, oh, well, here we are. I guess this is what we're doing now.
And it was done very well. I mean, there were some visceral reactions that I had for sure. But I think that, you know, being very honest and raw through your writing is powerful.
Thank you.
So another theme or things that we explore in this book are the secrets and the strain that they cause upon families when you keep secrets and you whisper here, but then you stop talking when the kids come around and they want to know what's going on. So why did you choose to have kind of that secret theme to include it?
Something I didn't know. I knew there were issues, but it didn't click to me that they were secrets until I was trying to get an agent and trying to put my query letter together and trying to figure out what was the hook of the book. And I remember interviewing the author Clavis Natera about her debut novel, Neruda on the Park. And that book is about so many different things. And when we talked, she was like, it's a book about a family in crisis. And I was like, how did you sum it up so quickly? And so then again, I asked myself, well, what is my book about? And I was like, it's about secrets. Like, I didn't see it at first. And then once I realized that, I was like, oh my gosh, they're all keeping secrets from each other. And they think it's in the name of protection. Yes. And just knowing my family, knowing Black families in general, you don't really find out about the secret until somebody's on the deathbed or at the repast. Mm-hmm. Like, well, you know. And it was like, no, I didn't know. Why didn't you tell me? Well, they were trying to keep it quiet. They didn't want anybody to think. And I was like, oh, this is what we're doing. This is what they're doing. So yes, it wasn't a surprise to me, but I had to find those threads to be able to explain it to you good people.
Okay, so then talk to us a little bit about some of the research that you did. I know you said that you interviewed women across the country, just like their experiences with birth and things like that. Was there any other additional research that you had to do in order to kind of get some of those scenes into the book, like with the ancestors?
No, I love history. I'm a history nerd. I'm the girl that read Roots at 12 on the school bus going first day of 7th grade at new school. Yes, I'm that nerd. Big old book reading about Chicken George and all the people at 12 years old. So a lot of the historical scenes were things that I had already known or research that I had done for other projects. Like I mentioned, I was in the archives for Mardi Gras Indians learning about that. One of the freelance pieces I wrote in 2020 was about a place where I live in Florida. I live in Jacksonville, called Kingsley Plantation in American Beach. And the story of Kingsley Plantation is that the woman who ran it, Anna Kingsley, she was kidnapped from Senegal in the late 1790s. She was 13 years old. She was kidnapped and put on the boat of the enslaver Zephaniah Kingsley. She was 13. She was first taken to Cuba before she was brought to Florida. When she got to Florida, she was already pregnant. She was acknowledged as his wife. She had like 4 children for him. He emancipated her. She emancipated her children. They ran the plantation as like a safe haven during the Civil War. It is a preserved site. You can still go and see everything and take all the tours. Everything is still there, including the slave quarters, which are made of tabby, not wood. So that's like an oyster and limestone shell composite that they use to make the slave quarters. So I had written this long form essay about her, but also her great grandson is his name Abraham Lincoln Lewis. He was Florida's first Black millionaire. He and his business partners ran the Afro-American Life Insurance Company, and in the 1930s they bought 200 acres of beachfront property in Nassau County, and they named it American Beach. And from 1930 whatever until Hurricane Dora in 1964, Black people would come in droves every summer to American Beach so that they would have a place to have their summers and not really deal with the segregation, because it was owned by Black people. Like Ray Charles performed there, James Brown performed there, like the clubs were there. And so it's this preserved place. So all that information was already in my mind and then came out on the page for in the novel, and how I was talking about the Dupree women's place in the South and what they had and what they owned and how they lived their lives. That was already knowledge and research I had done for other projects. One of the things that I did have wrong that I actually corrected in the text was the census workers. I remember in the one draft I had Emma going into town with the woman who's raising her, Evangeline, to give the census for 1870. And then I read something later on that said, no, the census workers went door to door, and they were only allowed to go as far as the porch, and they were told not to antagonize no matter what answers they were given. And so then I had to revise that scene. So like a lot of the historical story was already there. The hardest time period for me to write was Nadia in the 1980s of Chicago, because I'm like, I don't know what y'all was doing in the 80s friend. And so like that was one of the hardest things to write. But even the contemporary story is steeped in my nostalgia for home.
So then, talking about what was hard, who was the hardest Dupree woman to write or to bring to life, you
Gladys.
think?
Gladys was the hardest woman to write. Everybody has feelings about her.
She's a piece of work.
She was the
Love
hardest.
her.
Do you?
Love her.
Some people love her, some people hate her. I'm like, I don't know about that one.
Look, everybody got an auntie or a grandma who kind of...
She was the hardest to write only because it took me a while to find the voice for her character. And so, like I said, when I started writing the expanded versions, I started with her. But because the generations are really close, all the other women are there. And so, but once I found the voice, it was easy to make them distinct amongst them and have them all in the scenes doing whatever they were doing and saying what they were going to say and kind of taking up their sides in the old argument that they'd never really had out, but everybody knows what they're going to say. But I had to find it. And part of it I felt like was because I could hear them talking to me. Like I could hear Juby's voice clearly. I could hear them. I didn't really hear Gladys. I could see her and I knew what happened, but it was like she was saying, well, I mean, you know what happened, well, I got to tell you. And I'm like, you got to give me something to put on this page, friend. Like, I can't just be out here on vibes. Like, I need you to tell me what really happened. And so, but once I was able to unlock it, and I think it's chapter 3 or 4, it's a line like, you know, they came with hot pans in hand, curious eyes and crooked smiles to find out what they had heard. I was like, okay, I think I found it. And from there, I was off.
Okay. And you gave her a voice. Okay, I heard her clear as day while I was reading.
Well, I mean, like the one-liners that she had with the jabs that she takes in like the contemporary story with Tati and Nadia were easy. Like her zingers were easy to write, but I didn't understand the why. Like, why was she like that? Right. And so that was the part that took me time to like develop. Like, why is she like that? And then I wanted to do that for all of the characters to show a break in their personality between what their turning point was. So what happened to them either by no fault of their own or by a choice that they made, and how were they before that moment, and then what did they look like after it? How did they move on from it? How did they survive? How did they thrive? How did they parent on the other side of that one specific moment? And that's really what I was looking at in exploring each of the 7 daughters.
So we see the women, we see their lives throughout the story. We also meet some men along the way. Right.
It's a good one. It's a couple
there was a good one.
You said
or two. Or two.
There was 2.
So, right. Debatable, okay? Debatable. The one is debatable. But, so my question is, what do you think that all the men who love the Dupree women have in common?
That's a good one. They don't mind a headstrong woman. I think of George, Eugene, and even Samson. He got there.
He did.
He got there.
It was rocky.
It was rocky
for a little bit.
But he got there. It's like they knew what they were getting into and they chose to stay.
Absolutely.
And they didn't mind it. And sometimes that's all you need. Someone that doesn't mind, like, she gonna be who she is, and it's gonna be all right.
Preach. So then I want to kind of talk a little bit about Tati.
Okay.
Because, you know, she's kind of like that root, okay? So why was it important for you to showcase that search for her father? And then besides that, kind of not having that traditional, I'll say, like happily ever after, and kind of how it ends. I don't want to give anything away, but.
Well, initially, like, I started the novel in trying to write about a girl who didn't know her father. It was born out of my own experience of like having a complex relationship with my own father. And I was very much the angsty teenager who wrote poetry about so many different topics, including my father and his ways. And so, like, giving her my emotionality and my interiority was very easy. And so, but what I thought was going to happen was that she was going to have a lot of anger for him. But because her father wasn't there, she was able to romanticize that relationship and idealize it. And all of her anger was for her mother. And her mother was trying to show up the best way that she could. And there's a line toward the end where it says, like, you know, Nadia spoon-fed her what her father gave her in one dose. And she doesn't realize that until she has a moment of reckoning and realize that what her mother has been telling her, for better or for worse, was the truth. And so, but making her dogged in her pursuit is just like, why won't you tell me? Like, why won't you tell me? It's part of the questions that I have for readers at the end of the book. Do mothers owe their daughters explanation of their lowest moments, of their lives, of their choices? And then do daughters owe their mothers grace and understanding. So those, you dwell on those. I've done my part. Talk amongst yourselves.
And that's true. I mean, and we talked about it too. It really felt like almost peeling away that layer of, because when you grow up, your mother is your mother. Like, she's everything. And then as you grow into your womanhood, you see her as she's just
another woman.
She's just another woman. We're just trying to do the best that she can.
Yes.
So I think you absolutely achieved that.
Thank you.
So what inspired you to include a passing theme?
The way that I did the passing storyline was because I'd never seen it done. Also, the true inspiration was my daughter. You see, I am very deep chocolate brown. My ex-husband was very deep chocolate brown. My baby girl is yellow. And she was born, and I said, where did this yellow baby come from? Like, my son is deep chocolate brown. Sis, one is not like the other. And I was like, okay, whose color did you pull? And so seeing her and raising her, and then it was also around the time that I think Meghan Markle was pregnant and everybody wanted her to have a dark baby. I was like, ooh, let that baby come out dark. You know how we do. It's like we was hoping to, like, ooh, let that baby come out dark. Make the royal family real mad, right? And so it was around that time that I was thinking about the passing storyline. I knew I wanted to have one of the women pass. But also, I'd never seen it done in a novel where passing is unsuccessful. I've always seen it be successful. You think about Yah Jesse's Homegoing. You think about Nella Larson, who started it all with passing. Think about Britt Bennett's The Vanishing Half. It's always successful. The one novel that I did read where it was unsuccessful, it happens off the page. It was Eric Jerome Dickey's book, John Viev. The character comes back, but you don't see them reckoning with their choices. It's summarized. It's part of the backstory, but it's not present. I wanted to make it present. I wanted to make this character wrestle and reckon with her choices, and then how does that child grow up knowing that her mother despises her for a reason? Okay. Everybody's scratching their head. Going through it.
So in your absolute wildest dreams, and if you want to keep it close to the chest, that's okay, I understand. What is your dream for your baby, the Seven Daughters?
Because my background is in television, I think I would absolutely want to see a series. I absolutely want to see a series. It should be 7 episodes, 1 episode per daughter, and take you through it to the end. That is, like, that would be everything.
I'm here for it. We love a limited series. We love a limited series. Netflix. So then I'm going to wrap because they try and give me a signal, you know. But I could talk about this all day. What is next for you in the writing or non-writing world?
You know, it's still in the writing world. I have a day job that I would at some point want to leave and just play with my imaginary friends all day. So I am knee-deep into a second draft of a project that is contemporary, that's looking at another large cast of characters and how they survive through a moment of crisis. And then there's another book idea that I have early research on. It's back to historical fiction. It's a retelling of one of the oldest stories known to man, but I want to write it in verse. Yeah, so I'm always complicating my writing life, trying to challenge myself. But those are the 2 projects that are like top of mind, but I need to finish one before I can start the other and like hopefully sell both of them. So, you know, wish me luck.
We wish you all the luck, okay? So, okay. So if anyone in the audience has any questions for Nikesha, she is okay. She is here, she is available.
It's just because my last name is Dupree, so I feel a strong connection. And even as you were talking, I'm also a young writer and wanting to publish books. So for you, how important is it for you to uplift Black voices?
It's everything. I mean, that's why I started my podcast, Black and Published, in 2021. Because as a younger writer, as someone who wasn't traditionally published, didn't have an agent, didn't know how, and didn't know how to get attention or get people to read my work, I was like, I want to create a place for other writers to come to talk about their work, no matter what their background is. If the work is good, I want to have the conversation. So that was the whole point of me starting a podcast and doing it for as long as I have. Like, it had nothing to do with me publishing this book. And so anytime that I see a writer, I've had writers email me, DM me, can we talk, send me their query letter. I will send back feedback. I will send them my query letter for this book specifically. I will get on a Zoom call and whatever you need if it's within my capacity at the time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There are many others. Okay, going back to Dupree, my mom's a Dupree. And when I came across her book, I was like, oh my God, they know the family. Because my sister found out when she was like in high school from grandmother when she was ill, said, that's not your daddy.
Ooh.
Yes. And we're in our 40s. We still don't know who that is. So we're like, Ma, how you holding a secret? When you gonna tell it? Are you gonna take it to the grave? What's going on? So I was like, I gotta read this book. It definitely resonates with me. So what inspired you to use the last name Dupree?
It just showed up on the page. When I was a young girl, I danced, and there was a friend that danced with me. Her last name was Dupree. And so when I was writing the scenes with the enslavers, that was a name that came up, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess they're Duprees. And it just came up on the page.
Yeah. So I'm hoping my mom, I was holding it and not telling her about the book because I didn't want her to hear that secret part. It's, just like, it's for touching topics. But I accidentally told her today where I was going. She was like, Dupree? Really? Oh, you don't read that book for my cousins. Yeah, Michael.
Oh, they about to tell all the tea now.
Hopefully it'll inspire her to have the conversation with my sister because we don't want to keep pushing it. It's my sister's business per se, but it's still our business.
Well, I mean, it's our business now. You got to report back. Inquiring minds want to know.
Because we are like, it's a topic my other sister and I talk about. We don't talk about like the sister who's dealing with it. We don't. But yeah,
okay.
I just want to share with you, I live in Gwinnett County. I live in Lawrenceville, so I don't live very far away. But the funny thing is that I get Simon & Schuster's email. So I'm always getting email, and I just retired recently, so I finally get a chance to read my email. And so the other day, I said, okay, what's Simon & Schuster sending me? And they were sending me information about your book. And I said, wow, that sounds like an interesting book. I would really like to read that. Let me look into it. Let me see who the author is. Let me see where she's from. And then it said something about this is her travel schedule. She said, what's How did I miss it? Because it was the same day. And then we said, oh, no, it's rescheduled. So I just want to let you know that it's very exciting to be here. And Simon & Schuster is putting your book out there.
Yes, I saw that corporate was putting the book in the email. The whole team was very pleased that they were supporting it and had it all on the website. So we very grateful. Thank you to everybody.
So in listening to you, there were a lot of times your characters, you didn't know where they were going, or like, how did you get there with them?
Ooh. When I write, I have a general outline of what happens next every chapter. And it may just be one sentence. I always know the beginning, and I always know the end. So I knew the end, and I don't mean the epilogue end, that came later, but the very end of like the formal book, I knew that was the ending. In the prologue, from that first line, I knew what that beginning was. And once I had the expanded storyline for all of the daughters, I knew what their turning points were going to be. So one deals with passing, her daughter deals with being shunned by her mother. Another deals with, why she leaves to go up to Chicago. Nadia's dealing with her failed relationship with Tati's father. Tati's searching for that father. Because once I knew all of their turning points, for me, it was about finding the parallels between them to put the book together. And so I wrote just enough of every character so that, one, to make it manageable, but also I was like, I don't want to write a whole book with just these 5 extra women when I've got one with 2. So thinking about them in the turning point, so it was just a few chapters for each of them, and then putting them together kind of showed the arc of the family and how they repeated certain patterns and cycles. even though it wasn't a 1-to-1 correlation. It might have been 2-to-1 or 3-to-1, but it was all there, and it was really about finding those parallels and putting them together, but then also really being locked in with the manuscript, with God, and saying, okay, Lord, what happens next? Asking the characters, what happens next? I do a lot of asking in my writing process. Like, all of my writing starts with an unanswered question that I'm trying to write to the end to find some type of solution or resolution for it. Does that answer your question?
It does. I do kind of fight it.
Okay.
You write down, like, you write all this character story, or do you jump around until they connect?
No, for this particular book, I wrote them sequentially. So even in that first draft, it was Tati first, and she had the first 7, 8, 9 chapters. Then it was Nadia had another 7, 8, 9 chapters before I brought them to a resolution, which is still similar to the resolution in the novel that we have today. And when I got the expanded storyline, I knew I was going to expand the novel. I did the same thing. I wrote Gladys top to bottom, and then I wrote her mother all the way to the end of the line. But because Gladys is like the linchpin to me between the generations. She's the last one to live in the South, the first one to move to Chicago and make new memories there. Everyone else, the older women, are present in her story. And so it was easier to write the subsequent women after I found Gladys's voice, because they were already there moving about. And so when I got to their point of view specifically, it was just like, okay, it's my turn now, step to the front. You're welcome. I'm gonna let you do your thing. I'm gonna just be quiet and see who you pick.
We're going to go back these, and then if we have 10 Gladys was your favorite character.
No, Juby is my favorite character. Who is my least favorite character? Carl Darren. And that's a name I haven't said. So Carl Darren is my least favorite character.
I was just gonna wonder, outside of, I was wondering if your Chicago family is from Alabama. Where'd you get Alabama from?
Because I was obsessed with the Clotilda. Yeah, my Chicago family, my mother and my father are both from New Orleans, Louisiana. My mother's family is from, before they moved to New Orleans, they lived on the plantation in Napoleonville in Assumption Parish. So when you meet Eugene and he says he's Creole from Assumption Parish, that's a nod to my mom and her family.
Because my dad's from outside Chicago, and his dad's family was from Mississippi, and his mom's family was from New Orleans.
Yeah, that old central line between New Orleans, Alabama, Mississippi, it made a lot. It was a lot of trips going up into Chicago.
Yeah, the broad. And I think
That was one only thing I was going to ask too, because I grew up on the west side of Chicago, but I went to school on the south side. Of Chicago.
Okay.
So I can tell you what was happening in the 80s. In Chicago, but
so next time.
Because I didn't know that period, they're inside a lot in the 80s, like they're in places instead of like out and about in the streets. That's how I worked. I was like, we're just gonna put them, they're in the club, they are in the house, they are in the house.
there's a lot of house parties, the basement party.
See? That's how I massage that. For like the 1990s in Chicago, Tati is outside. Like, you see everything.
Well, I take everybody in here so we can have everybody have time to take pictures. Let's go around. So thank you again. Again, the bookseller's outside of this room, and I'm thinking we can take pictures right here. Which
Yes, can we all get together and do a little backwards thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like a selfie. Everybody, come together, hold the books up. Let's go, come in. Come on. Everybody squeeze, there you go. Here.
We gotta outdo the other location, y'all. Gwinnett County in the house.